Welcome to Offer You Stories, where we want you to talk about the places you've been before they get there. Story number 6, The Lonely Heart. They got some stuff to say you need to hear. What does a doctor do to heal himself from a lonely heart? What can he prescribe? Who can he call? The doc had no answer to these questions, so he did what he told many others not to do. Without anyone knowing, he stole drugs from the hospital where he worked and planned to take them to make himself feel better. He had been dealing with the pain of a lonely heart for too long to ignore it anymore. Something had to change. He knew it would not be a permanent solution, but he didn't need a permanent solution. He just needed something to make himself feel better for a little while. As he stood in front of the medical cabinet, searching through the prescription drugs, he thought back to what he learned about them. How much to take, the side effects, and most importantly, how addictive it could be. All of them had addictive qualities, but he didn't want to take anything he could not turn back from. Although he knew no one was there, he began to feel nervous. He could feel sweat pooling on his neck as he lifted each bottle, read his name, and pondered its dangers. Finally, he settled on a depressant and slid the bottle into his leather bag. The doc went back to his office and interacted with a few people. Although they had no idea what he had just done, he could not help but feel they did. He felt their shock and disappointment, although it didn't exist. But reality overtook these feelings. They didn't really know anything about him. They came to his parties, laughed at his jokes, and pretended to know him. But they didn't know him. They thought just because he had it all, that he had it all. But they didn't know how he really had nothing. How he bought stuff to bring himself the temporary happiness that stuff brings. But happiness is something he could not remember feeling in a very long time. He packed some of his belongings, said some meaningless goodbyes, and headed toward the elevator. When he got downstairs to exit the building, he passed the security station at the end of the hall. "Hold up, Doc," Marquise, the security guard, said to him. The doc stopped, and so did his heart. "I can't let you just walk out of here," Marquise said, uncrossing his legs and standing up. He took a step towards the doc, making the doc instinctively step back. "You never answered my question," Marcus said. The doctor gathered himself and let out a sigh. He remembered the quick conversation he had with Marquise when he came in this morning. Does Curry belong on the Mount Rushmore of basketball? The doc tilted his head and scratched. "I can't put him on there. Not because he don't deserve to, but because I can't take anyone off." This led to a spirited debate, which started with Kobe and ended with Magic. They agreed on some things, disagreed on others, and ultimately agreed to disagree. Marquise's shift ended, and they continued talking in the parking lot. They reached the doc's car first, and they stopped. The doc ran his head over the place where the handle should be, and the doors to the cars rose like wings. "I love seeing that," Marcus said. "This ride ain't no joke." The doc smiled, but didn't smile. Something about it got Marcus's attention, and he asked, "Are you okay, Doc?" The doc's first impulse was to lie, to pretend like he has always pretended. But something about the situation felt safe and made him want to let out what he had been keeping inside. "I hate going home sometimes. Most of the time, really. Something about it seems..." He paused, searched for the right word, and found it. Meaningless. He kept talking, and Marquise listened without interrupting. When the doc finally finished, Marquise waited a full 10 seconds before saying anything. "Me and you are the same, but we ain't, Doc. We the same because everything you just described is what I felt for most of my life, but couldn't put into words. But we different because I'm a drug addict." The doc always heard rumors about Marquise being an ex-addict, but it never bothered him. Marquise always seemed cool with him, even though he never came to his parties. Now, I don't got the same money as you. To be honest, I wish I had money problems, but I used drugs to deal with the feelings I had. Before I knew it, I used drugs when I felt bad. I used them when I felt good. And finally, I just used them because I couldn't stop. Soon, the drugs became the pain. Marquise went on to tell him about his life, and unlike Doc, he didn't hold anything back, especially when talking about the people he hurt. The doc could see the pain from his past rising inside of him, and he didn't want to make him relive it, so he interrupted. So what made you turn it all around? Marquise stopped talking and looked at his watch. He rubbed his hand over the doc's car where the door handle should have been. He expected the doors to rise like wings, but it didn't. The doc smiled. It won't work for you. Dang, that's tight, Marquise said. Let's go for a ride. I always want to ride in one of these anyway. Can it really drive by itself? The doc didn't give it much thought because he didn't want the night to end. This had been the best time he could remember having in years. There's a meeting nearby I go to a lot. It's not my main meeting because I live across town, but sometimes I go there because it's so close to the hospital, Marquise said. The doc tilted his head and scratched his temple. Don't you have to do drugs to go to those meetings? Yeah, but they don't have to know you don't use drugs. It doesn't matter anyways. They got some stuff to say you need to hear. The doc thought some more. It seemed kind of wrong to pretend he had a drug problem. Then he looked at his bag and thought to himself, maybe I'm not pretending. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and do what you gotta do. Peace.